What if the faces you despise are really fragments of your own reflection? You may not realize it now, but every wave of anger you feel toward them, those people, those actions, those traits, runs deeper than you think. It's more than a fleeting emotion. It's more than the righteous indignation you cling to. In that flash of hatred, you're peering into a hidden mirror. You're catching a glimpse of the parts of yourself you least want to see. Look at your own life for a moment. Think of the person who irritates you the most. Maybe they're arrogant, forever boasting of their achievements, or maybe they're deceitful, always weaving new webs of lies. You feel justified in your resentment. You wear your anger like a shield, but where does that shield come from? You might say, it comes from them. They've done wrong. I'm innocent. Yet somewhere deep inside, there's a voice that begs to differ. A quiet whisper that says, there's more to the story. A hint that your hatred isn't purely righteous, that you're not a flawless spectator of someone else's sins. Instead, you're condemning something uncomfortably close to your own heart. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the dark side of your psyche that houses everything you refuse to acknowledge as yours, your guilt, your fears, your unspoken desires. It's easier to project that darkness onto someone else, someone who conveniently embodies what you're too afraid to confront within yourself. You point, judge, and condemn, when in fact you're staring at your own reflection in a twisted mirror. Think about it. Ask yourself, why does this behavior trigger me so intensely? Why do I feel something so strong? If I was indifferent or truly unconnected to these traits, they might bother me, but they wouldn't ignite such hatred. Real hatred is often a clue. It's as though you're saying, I recognize that darkness. I know it intimately, and it terrifies me. So you demonize it in others. Friedrich Nietzsche once warned about fighting monsters lest we become them ourselves. But what if the monster is already within? What if that monster compels you to attack others, not because you're purely righteous, but because you're running from the reflection? Schopenhauer spoke of our fundamental ignorance of the forces within us, unconscious wills that shape our judgments more than we'd like to admit. Could that be happening here? Could your hatred be a mask for unacknowledged self-loathing? It's not an easy thought. The mind rebels against it. You may recoil, no, that's not me. I would never do those things. Yet consider this. The parts of yourself you find most difficult to accept are the same parts most likely to be disguised, denied, and projected. You brand them evil in someone else, because to see them as your own is intolerable. Picture a scenario. You hate arrogance above all else. You can't stand people who brag. Their vanity repulses you. You vow never to be like them. But if you're honest, you might find those same seeds of pride in your own heart. Maybe you occasionally gloat in your mind, daydreaming about how others should admire you. Maybe you crave recognition more than you'll admit. And so, because you detest your latent pride, you hate it more fiercely in others. By attacking them, you try to slay the part of yourself you despise. Or maybe it's dishonesty that enrages you. You consider yourself a paragon of truth. Anyone caught lying should be swiftly condemned. But trace that anger back to its roots. Could there be lies you tell yourself every day? Lies about your capabilities, your insecurities, your relationships. Instead of confronting that possibility, it's easier to lash out. It's easier to say, they're the liars, not me. This pattern repeats in countless ways. Our capacity for hatred often stems from the same traits we battle within ourselves. This isn't to excuse destructive behavior in others. It's not an invitation to tolerate true harm or injustice. Instead, it's a spotlight onto a psychological puzzle. Why do some forms of wrongdoing affect you so personally? Why do they burrow under your skin and occupy your thoughts? Jung believed integrating the shadow is crucial for wholeness. Recognizing your hidden motivations, your repressed tendencies, and yes, even your capacity to be what you despise. Only then can you approach your own nature with honesty. And only then can you meet others with a sense of clarity rather than projection. Think of it like a dream. Your hatred is a symbol in that dream, pointing to something you've left unacknowledged. If you can decode that symbol, you might awaken to deeper self-awareness. But if you ignore it, the dream intensifies. The hatred festers, and you remain trapped in a cycle of projection and denial. Dostoevsky, in his exploration of guilt and redemption, suggested that the lines separating good and evil run right through the human heart. This line doesn't conveniently stay in one corner, in someone else's domain. It meanders through your own being. You contain multitudes. You're capable of being the villain as easily as the hero. So ask yourself, if I can be honest about my potential for darkness, can I let go of this obsessive hatred of it in others? Of course, society encourages black and white judgments. We want villains to be purely evil so we can feel purely justified in hating them. That sense of moral superiority is intoxicating. But be wary. The sharper your judgment, the more you may be hiding something from yourself. The more vigorously you condemn, the stronger the possibility that you're fighting your own reflection. Nietzsche's caution resonates here. When you stare long into the abyss stares back. So when you stare into the face of what you hate, you meet your own gaze in the shadows of your psyche. Consider the moments in your past when you felt that burning resentment. Consider the words you shouted or the thoughts you allowed to echo in your mind. Where did it lead you? Did it bring clarity, resolution? Or did it plant a seed of bitterness that grew, quietly strangling your peace? Sometimes, the hatred we hold corrodes us from within, blinding us to our own imperfections. When you say, "I would never be like them," you put yourself on a pedestal. But that pedestal is built on shaky ground. The more you insist on your moral purity, the more you risk toppling into the very traits you condemn. Reflect on this for a moment. Think of a time you criticized someone's behavior, only to catch yourself months later exhibiting a strikingly similar flaw. Maybe you snapped at someone for being selfish, then realized you were equally self-absorbed in another context. It's a common twist in our stories. It's not because you're a hypocrite, not by choice. It's because you're human and the lines between you and them aren't as rigid as you'd like them to be. This is where self-awareness becomes radical. To admit, I see a piece of myself in what I despise. It's not comfortable. It's unsettling and humbling. Yet it can be liberating. Because once you recognize that darkness, you can stop living in its shadow. You can explore the aspects of yourself you've disowned, rather than punishing others for reminding you of your hidden depths. Jungian psychology would advise encountering your shadow with curiosity rather than denial. When you feel hatred flare, pause and ask, what is this revealing about me? It doesn't mean you condone harmful behavior. It means you refuse to let that behavior blind you to your own soul. It means you're reclaiming your power from the illusions that keep you fragmented. At this point, you might wonder, does this mean you can never judge wrongdoing, never stand up for what's right? Not at all. Morality matters, justice matters, but there's a difference between conscious discernment and unconscious hatred. Conscious discernment says, that act is harmful, I oppose it. Unconscious hatred says, I despise them completely, without awareness of the deeper psychological interplay. One approach strives for clarity and solutions. The other perpetuates a cycle of blame and blindness. Consider what happens when you transform hatred into understanding. Suddenly, your energy shifts from condemnation to curiosity. You can ask, why would someone behave this way? And in that question, you might find echoes of your own vulnerabilities. Maybe they lie because they fear rejection. Maybe you also fear rejection sometimes. Maybe they boast because they feel inadequate. Maybe you also crave validation. This doesn't erase accountability. It simply unearths the shared humanity beneath the surface. The lines become less about them and us and more about what we all carry within. Nietzsche also believed in the value of self-overcoming, that the greatest task is to transcend your own limitations. Hatred hinders that. It binds you to your shadow, fueling a war within your psyche. When you let hatred control you, you forfeit your own growth. You stay locked in a reactive cycle, always needing an enemy to define yourself against. But if you accept that the potential for these negative traits lives in you, too, then you can transcend them. You can grow beyond them because you finally acknowledge their existence. Ask yourself this: do you truly want to keep that hatred alive? Is it helping you become who you want to be? Or is it siphoning your energy, filling your thoughts with darkness, preventing you from evolving? Take a breath. Feel the weight of that hatred. Notice how it tenses your muscles, quickens your heart, narrows your focus. That's the cost. That's what you pay every time you indulge the narrative that you're in a perfect position to condemn. Here's a proposition from the Stoics. Distinguish between what's under your control and what isn't. Other people's actions, motivations, and flaws, those aren't under your control. What lies within your power is how you respond, how you interpret the situation, how you choose to integrate the lesson. If their arrogance, deceit, or malice ignites hatred in you, ask yourself whether there's a more constructive path. Could you use that discomfort as a mirror to refine your own nature? This doesn't mean you invite toxicity into your life. You can keep your boundaries, you can walk away, but you can do so without carrying the poison of hatred in your veins. You can do so with empathy for your own shadow, understanding that being human is a messy affair. No one escapes without contradiction or conflict. In The Brothers Karamazov, Dostoevsky explores how hatred and love aren't always opposites, but twisted reflections of deep passion, guilt, and longing. When you hate what you see in another person, you're hating something intimately connected to you, something that, if you were to trace it far enough, might reveal an unhealed wound in your own heart, a part of you that's desperately calling for attention. Try this as an exercise. Next time you feel that surge of hatred, don't rush to blame. Pause. Focus on that energy in your body. Observe it. Without judging it as good or bad, let yourself feel the raw tension. Then ask, what am I hiding from myself? It might be painful at first. You might feel resistance. But if you let that question sink in, you may see glimpses of your own reflection in the behavior you despise. That's the opening for growth, a chance to integrate the fragmented parts of yourself. For many, the idea that you are what you hate is an affront to the ego. The ego thrives on separation. I'm here, they're there, we're different. It takes comfort in dividing the world into right and wrong, good and bad. But reality is more complex. When you dissolve those barriers, you confront both the beauty and darkness within. It's not a comfortable process, but it's a necessary one if you seek authenticity. People might say, this is too bleak. Why focus on the negative? But this is precisely how you transcend negativity, by shining a light on it, rather than pretending it's all outside of you. By daring to see your own dark corners, you reduce their power over you. Denial only strengthens the shadow. Recognition dismantles it. And with that recognition comes the possibility of compassion for yourself and for others who are also wrestling with their own shadows. Sometimes, in your zeal to condemn, you overlook the fact that most hatred is rooted in pain. Pain of being unseen, unacknowledged, rejected, or misunderstood. The person you hate might mirror an experience you've repressed, or they might mirror an aspect of your personality you've locked away. It doesn't justify their actions, but it can explain your reaction. And understanding that reaction gives you a chance to heal. Imagine you're carrying a mirror. Everything you encounter, especially the things that evoke strong emotion, is a reflection of some inner dynamic. This can be frightening. It can also be liberating, because now, instead of being at the mercy of your triggers, you can use them as signposts. Every time you feel an intense hate, you can say, here's something I need to examine. Rather than letting it consume you, you transform it into a tool for introspection. It becomes a catalyst, not a prison. Carl Jung emphasized that what we do not make conscious appears in our lives as fate. If you insist on ignoring your shadow, if you reject the notion that you could share qualities with what you hate, you may find yourself caught in repetitive cycles, attracting the same people, the same conflicts, the same frustrations. You become a magnet for the very traits you deny because life is pushing you to face them. It's urging you to look in the mirror you keep turning away from. So, how do you break the cycle? You start by taking responsibility. You say, yes, I have the potential for arrogance. Yes, I have the potential for dishonesty or cruelty. Yes, I can be as flawed as anyone else. And in that admission, there's a strange kind of release. You stop battling illusions. You stop needing an enemy to prove your innocence. Instead, you can stand on solid ground. You can work on those aspects of yourself with intention. You can direct your energy to real change, instead of fueling the flames of hatred. In time, you'll notice a shift. When you see someone behaving in a way that once triggered your hate, you might feel a spark of understanding, not self-righteous rage. You may see the wounded humanity behind their behavior. You may set boundaries or speak out against it, yet you'll do so from a place of calm determination, not seething contempt. You'll find that your mind stays clearer, your heart lighter. The cycle of hatred loses its grip when you accept that you, too, walk a fine line between what you love and what you despise. Consider the teachings of many spiritual traditions, the idea that we're all connected. On a surface level, it sounds cliché, but psychology hints at a similar truth. We mirror each other's qualities, both light and dark. The more you demonize another, the more you feed the illusion that you're somehow separate or superior. In that illusion, you miss a profound chance to know yourself. You miss the chance to heal. This is not easy. Realizing that you are what you hate can be jarring. It's a dismantling of the ego's comfortable walls. But it can also be a doorway to radical authenticity. The moment you see that the enemy is, in some way, an external reflection of your internal conflicts, you gain the power to transform both. You can direct your energy away from blind rage and toward self-growth. Ask yourself, perhaps for the last time, is there something in me that resonates with what I hate out there? Wait for the uncomfortable truth to rise. Don't run from it. Don't hide behind justifications or moral superiority. Embrace it. That's the road to understanding your own shadow. That's the path toward dissolving the barriers that keep you fragmented. Because whatever you refuse to accept inside of you will haunt you in the faces of others. At the core, this journey isn't about shame. It's about freedom. It's about breaking chains that keep you locked in cycles of anger and denial. It's about learning to see the fullness of your humanity, your potential for both darkness and light. When you accept that fullness, you can stand in the midst of life's complexities without losing yourself to hatred. You discover that what once enraged you can become an avenue for compassion, for yourself, for the human condition. The reward is profound. Imagine being able to meet conflict without that clenching dread, that red-hot anger. Imagine replacing hatred with a balanced clarity rooted in self-knowledge. You don't become indifferent or passive. You simply stop pouring fuel onto the fire. You stop letting your own repressed traits wage war against you in the guise of other people. In doing so, you reclaim your energy. You channel it into growth, creativity, and genuine connection. This is how you integrate the wisdom of thinkers like Jung and Nietzsche. Rather than using them as intellectual ornaments, you allow their insights to shape your inner life. You realize the shadow isn't an abstract concept. It's a living force in your psyche, influencing your everyday reactions. When you harness it, you do more than just conquer your hate, you elevate your entire being. Pause for a moment, take a breath, reflect on your strongest hatred. Think of the person or the trait that ignites your anger more than anything else. Dare to ask, is that me? Feel the discomfort. Let it wash over you. That discomfort is the sign of an opening into greater honesty, greater self-awareness. If you cross that threshold, you may find the very thing you hated is also the key to unlocking a part of yourself that's long been denied. In that sense, the people we hate can become our greatest teachers. They reveal our blind spots. They lure us into confrontation with our own shadows. That doesn't mean we have to like them. It doesn't mean we excuse their actions. But it means we can learn from the intensity of our reactions, using them to grow more fully into who we're meant to be. And so, you reach a paradoxical conclusion. The traits you loathe in others can be a guide to understanding the deepest parts of yourself. You are what you hate is not a condemnation. It's an invitation to look inward, to dismantle your illusions, to face the hidden corners of your psyche and bring them into the light. All of this leads to a final realization. The journey doesn't end with hatred, it ends with transcendence. With the realization that your mind has the power to integrate rather than fragment your experience of life, darkness and light coexist within you. By recognizing the reflection, you turn hatred into self-awareness, blame into responsibility, and division into wholeness. So the next time you feel that powerful surge of hate, you'll remember these words. You'll remember that it might be less about them and more about you. It might be less about righteous fury and more about unresolved pain. And with that memory comes a choice. The choice to close your eyes and let the hatred reign, or the choice to open them and see yourself in the reflection. In that choice lies your power to be free. And maybe, just maybe, that's what it means to be truly human. To recognize the darkness we share, not as something to cast out, but as something to transform. Because in the end, what you hate in others might just be an unclaimed piece of yourself. And when you finally claim it, you claim the right to heal, to grow, and to become whole. That realization could change everything.